I've always enjoyed walking around the ground and waving to people and having a chat with people along the way.
There must be an angel.
Yeah, I do know an awful lot of people in Bradford. When you've been around as long as I have, you tend to get to know a lot of people. I'm working in television, of course.
Suddenly my heart goes boom. It's an orchestra of angels.
I'm John Helm. I've been a journalist and broadcaster since 1959, so 66 years in total so far.
Must be talking to an angel. Must be talking to an angel. Must be talking to an angel.
I'm a proud Bradfordian, I really am. And when we go abroad, people say, where are you from? I say, Bradford, we won the cup in 1911.
Must be talking to an angel. Must be talking to an angel. Must be talking to an angel.
Born here, born in Baildon, where I still live. My mother actually took me to the cinema in 1948 when I was 6, and I will never ever forget the Pathy News in black and white, Arsenal 0, Bradford Park Avenue 1. A chap called Billy Elliott scored the goal and Bradford beat Arsenal at Highbury in the FA Cup.
More than 1 million people jam the football grounds of Britain to see the unexpected make cup history. Arsenal, they go down to Bradford. 47,000 Highbury fans watch a match packed with cup tie thrills. The help of a loyal Arsenal fan is refused. They need a greyhound. With their players' average age in the 30s, Arsenal look just an ordinary team against a young and keen Bradford side. "36 minutes of play have gone, and Arsenal's Wembley dream is shattered by Elliott's goal.
I first came here in 1953. My father brought me to the Spy and Cop, which is at that end there. The players looked different. I can remember the first time they had luminous shirts. They were the first club in the country to have fluorescent, luminous shirts. This is one of my clubs, so it was going to be a very, very special day. I even thought one of my sons was going to be here that day. Nicholas, he told me he was going to come down, but at the last minute, he and his pals decided, we're not going to bother.
And here come the men who've made it possible, led by player manager Trevor Cherry. Behind him, Terry Yorath, his right-hand man.
Everybody wanting to see the trophy lifted high so they could cheer from wherever they were standing or sitting, because some people were still standing around in those days.
He says, well done. The crowd say, well done. And those are joyous scenes at Valley Parade.
One of those moments that will go down, there's the photograph, it's going to be in every Bradford City book from here to eternity. It was all a perfectly lovely day. Should have been fantastic.
I shouted out and threw myself over the wall.
Human beings seeing human beings in trouble.
It was total mayhem, to be honest.
There were people just everywhere.
You never forget something like that.
We were the lucky ones.
It's a catastrophe.
Probably the worst day ever. I think that's how you can describe it, the worst day ever.
The heat, the blaze is quite astonishing, and look at that for a picture. It's the saddest sight one could imagine. You can see the look of anguish on the face of one of the supporters who was over in that stand.
I just tried to be as accurate as possible in the description. There were some horrific scenes. I think I realised immediately not to dramatise, not to sensationalise, and I wasn't to know that 56 people were losing their lives at that moment.
And that is a catastrophic sight for Bradford City Football Club.
The thing for John was that he's from Bradford. To be able to talk over those pictures, knowing that there may be people there who were at risk, he did something that was, full of integrity and full of journalistic professionalism.
And look at that! Oh, the poor man. Oh, this is awful. The police desperately trying to save the life of a supporter. He'd come to watch the football. This is human tragedy.
He just did what came naturally. He just described what he saw and described it beautifully, not over emotional, and I don't know how he did it. I really don't know how he did it.
People can end their careers doing that. People can say the wrong thing, and he didn't put a foot wrong.
10 minutes ago, we were looking at a football game. I now look at a sad and tragic sight.
I tried to be selective in what I was saying, knowing I wouldn't be asked to carry on commentating for too long. And, my own private thoughts, which was, who is down there? And when the stand had gone, my gosh, that's traumatic.
This is the day that Valley Parade Football Ground is burning down.
Why did you make the decision to keep the cameras rolling?
Well, there was never a decision to be made not to.
There was no choice. We'd had experience of something similar, and I knew the right thing to do was to keep moving. The safeguard was we weren't transmitting live, so if it was really too distressing, we could edit later or not show it. Obviously, it was such a big story and such a unique occasion. We needed the pictures for other reasons apart from broadcasting.
And people shaking their heads.
There were people who were there who felt it was wrong to be covering this, to be recording it.
Some people came right in front of the cameras and started throwing stones and shouting, "Switch your cameras off." I was surprised, but I think I understood at the same time, and I certainly understood later when one or two apologised. I did get letters from one or two of those people later who were throwing stones at me. It was just the general atmosphere and the mood. They'd been watching a football match 1 minute and then all of a sudden they're standing on the pitch and everybody's a bit bewildered and what's going on without really knowing what was. The first inkling I had was two little boys climbed up the banking to my commentary position and said to me, "There's two dead down there, mister."
But when it was all over, we just stood in the middle of the field and looked round, and there was Bobby's helmets all over and coats, and we just stood there thinking, what the hell has happened?
I came back a little bit later to look onto the pitch, and that's when I saw there were body bags on the pitch, and not very nice at all.
It was the first time we'd actually seen people losing their lives, because firefighters, we went to many fatalities, but we'd never actually seen people lose their lives, whereas in that fire, we actually witnessed people losing their lives. And that, I think that stays with you. You never get over that.
I always thought when I watched a fire that, people could get out of fires and fires could be put out easily, but this was a tinderbox waiting to happen.
We thought we'd got most of the people out.
It was so quick, it was unbelievable. But the wind as well was a factor. The wind was never really bad down at Valley Parade, but that day for some reason it was blowing down there. So that had a massive effect, how quickly the fire spread that day.
Probably the worst day ever. I think that's how you can describe it, the worst day ever.
I took a call from the police control room, and I remember the policeman saying to me, can we have all available units to Valley Parade as we're involved in fire. My name is Raymond Banyard, and I was a fire control operator in the West Yorkshire Fire Service, as it was titled. When somebody picks the phone up and dials 999 and they ask a bit operator in the exchange, can they have the fire service? They're put through to a control room. We take the name and address and what's involved, and then we mobilise the nearest fire appliance to their incident. You know, a car fire, house fire, or in this day, Valley Parade football ground.
The lights lit up. We got that many calls in, we knew it was going to be a disaster. My name is Margaret Bottomley. I'm known as Maggie. My job that day was leading fire control operator, so I was sat on the back desk monitoring and mobilising fire engines.
When you get a lot of calls like that, all coming in all at once, from the public and from the police control room, you knew you had a serious incident.
I was washing my car when the bells went on. 2 pumps to a make-up, Bradford City Stadium. And I thought, oh, what's happened at Bradford City? My name's Billy Coughlin. I was a firefighter at Odsall Station in 1985 on that fateful day.
We saw the black smoke from Pudsey. My name's Ken Hunter, and in 1985 I was a firefighter based at Pudsey.
It was stand down on a Saturday afternoon. I was looking out the window and I saw the big pall of smoke. My name's Barry Whittaker. In 1985 I was at Pudsey Fire Station serving on Green Watch. I thought it's a tyre dump because it was thick, black smoke. So I'm laughing at the lads. You're going to be bright now, but I'll be all right because if you're the driver, you're the pump man.
We honestly thought it was a tyre dump. So our driver thought it was a laugh because he thought we were going to get absolutely covered in tyre and muck and stuff. But halfway down Leeds Road, we suddenly realised what was happening.
I knew exactly where I was going. I knew exactly the route I was going to take. And as soon as we turned out, we could see the pall of smoke. When I turned onto Manningham Lane, the sight we saw was, I said to my boss, I think they're making a film, Jack. I actually thought they were making a film.
Those, as you see, the scenes just outside the ground leading up to Manningham Lane.
We've all been to big fires, but because we were so close, the heat, unlike the modern lads, they've got cloth wet legs. We had yellow plastic wet legs, and I could feel them melting on my legs.
When we hit Valley Parade, really, we didn't realise what we were going into.
It was total mayhem, to be honest.
A lady grabbed hold of me. She's saying, if you see my son, he's got a blue anorak on. And I said, right.
I knew my brother was on duty that day, along with myself, but it was a message that came over from the fireground, fireman, and 2231, taken to hospital. That was my brother. We did not know at that time how serious it was. And we had to deal with that. Left duty and I went home to my parents. Then I found out that it was his fire boots that were burnt to his feet.
It wasn't until the fire was put out then we did a sweeping search of the stand, trying to find bodies under all the rubble and that.
Just formed up and we're just checking then to see if we could find any bodies really.
My first task, unfortunately, was putting like a spray jet, as we call it, on a pile of victims, dead bodies.
We found bodies in the back of the stand, we found bodies in the stand, and it was our job to get them out.
Walking along the bottom of the stand, I think we found 3. You couldn't tell there were bodies.
A lot of people went to the back where the stands were sort of locked when there was an open field in front of them. But psychologically, you don't run onto a football pitch.
There were 17 bodies in one tragic place that had all gone into trying to escape the fire, and tragically they'd lost their lives.
We were using marker boards from the scoreboard to identify what we thought were bodies.
We knew what we had to do when we did it, but we showed a great deal of respect for the people.
Some of my officers were putting coats over their heads and trying to drag people out, and one of my inspectors got a woman halfway out and couldn't hang on to her, and she just went. But I can only describe it as a terrible tragedy. Some of my officers have been in tears this afternoon, and that shows the extent of the tragedy when a policeman cries over something like this.
I've seen quite a few bodies during the course of my service, but this was off the scale.
But the image stays with you forever, because back in them days you didn't have counselling. The local pub was your counsellor.
We used to have bars in police stations at that time, and the steward was just going to go home, and I told him I'd like a pint, and he told me it were closed. So we had a very, very brief discussion, and I got a pint, and there was nobody to talk to. And that's when it hits you, when you suddenly think, yeah.
We did the best we could at the time. It's still a disaster, will always be a disaster, but on the day, we didn't know that.
You couldn't understand how it had happened, but you thought you could have done better. You thought you could have got everybody out. You thought that you hadn't done enough.
Afterwards, when it had all died down a little bit, I'd been asked to go in with this tape if I saw, let me say, a body, then I had to just roll it up and leave it close by. And a chap was peeping his head in, and he shouldn't have been dead anyway. But this chap says, I'm trying to find my dad and my son. I says, I'll have a look. So I walked about a bit, purposely stalled, because I didn't want to go back out and meet that chap. But afterwards, I came out and he wasn't there. But the only thing that got me a little bit was doing that and not being perhaps true to him. There were all sorts in there, and I couldn't say. And I never knew whether he found his son and his dad or not. I just wish he hadn't seen him.
People were coming up that were burnt.
We don't know. They're all over the place. But everybody's contact the police and you find out.
There was a policeman came up, and he were just across his eyes were just bright red. It must have been in pain. So, and I can remember that because I took my necked off. You wear the necked, put water on it, and I says, here, put that on, cool it. No, there's people worse than me, there's people worse than me.
This fireman collapsed after nearly 2 hours of back-breaking work.
Sub-Officer Greg from Bradford, he just keeled over in front of us.
Get an ambulance!
Paramedics and ambulance people were dealing with him. I thought, when's this going to end?
In the streets outside, many who'd witnessed the horror stood dazed. fans and players were simply unable to take in the extent of the
I was
tragedy.
in the stands trying to get kids and that out. When it started, we were in the paddock and we climbed in to help people get kids and that out. And by the time we got on, we only got up, maybe four kids and passed them over, and were over top of us as well. And we had to come out. There's nothing else we could do.
The people jumping out on fire, you know, you couldn't do a great deal for them, you know, if we're just totally on fire, you know, but, you know, this is, you know, it's eclipse to our season. It's, you know, it's just been so downhearted today, you know. It would to be such a happy day today for people of Bradford, you know, Bradford, but it's just come down in such a day of gloom.
I was going to the tea stand and I saw the fire coming on. I got onto the pitch and when most people were nearly out, I saw a fella at the front of the stand on fire. I went to try help him out and as I got close, it was that hot, I could hardly reach him. My head started blistering within feet of him and he was up in flames.
I was down at a training course at West Midlands Police. I'd heard there'd been a drastic fire. Didn't know what were involved. Got home and my wife at the time said, phone's been going like no else, can you ring control? Proceeded down to Bradford City football ground where I met my station officer who gave me a big bag of films and material and said, crack on. My name's Brian Saville and in 1985 I was working for the Visual Services Department of West Yorkshire Fire Service. As the day got longer, realised that it was obviously a tragedy that was unfolding. I photographed every bit of evidence we could and fire safety items and then got back up to the top of Midland Road and were met by horrific sight.
We'd never seen a fire like this. We'd been to fires before, we'd seen big fires, we'd seen tragic fires where we had fatalities, but we'd never seen a fire where we lost so many people in one incident. And it lives with you.
The terraced house is going down to the old stadium. There was mainly Asian families lived there.
I wasn't very much into football. I used to play rugby. My name is Fazlul Haq. On the 11th of May 1985, I lived at 5 Cornwall Terrace. We were at home getting on with our normal day-to-day life. And then suddenly we heard so much noise outside. We came out. We saw smoke coming out of the Bradford City ground. Scary experience. I could see, few people walking, fire all over their body. We just couldn't help them. I wish we could save those lives.
The doors was open, there was letting people come into the house, there was seeing to them.
The whole street came out. Everybody invited people to their houses, right? And let them use their phone, ring their loved ones to let them know that they're safe.
The whole community acted as one, as a community.
Well, we did what we could do for them, make them feel comfortable.
Brilliant, brilliant. Bradford's a great city, it really is.
Remembering those scenes makes you very sad.
It's just a pity it takes a tragedy to do that.
At 5:15, I went home just to tell my wife that I was okay. And I remember saying, I just want to go to the bedroom, and I sat on the edge of the bed and I cried. I just burst into tears and I just couldn't stop crying for maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes. I then went back down to the fire station and I said, look, we're going up there tonight to sort the bodies out, which were quite horrific, the thought of it. But I said, we're going to find possibly hundreds, because I honestly believe we would.
These are the days when some grounds had metal fencing round. And if Bradford City had had that, instead of 56, it had been 2,056.
I actually thought it was some kind of miracle that we only found so few people who'd lost their lives.
I was relieved from duty just before midnight. I was told to go home. And at that time we'd found 3. And I thought, well, all things considered, and it wasn't until the search continued and they went up to the back where the turnstiles were locked and that's when they found the majority of people.
I was asked either by Peter Jones or Robert Charles if I'd go down to the pitch and conduct some interviews.
Okay. And Colin, have you ever seen anything like this?
Oh, it's frightening. You know, you're reading the papers about people getting caught in cinemas and what have you, and you don't believe it. I saw a fire that was just a small fire.
That's when knowing a lot of people did help, because they were all personal friends.
Staff of the day began with a lot of smiles and it's ended in tragedy.
Well, it's just too bad for words, John. This was to be our Jubilee Day, this was to be our gala day where people were going to come and enjoy the things that we've created over the last 2 years. I mean, I don't know what the figure was, we were one hell of a crowd here and everybody was enjoying what was happening. And Lincoln had entered into the spirit of it. We're playing attacking football and all of a sudden we have this.
It was a horrible thing to have to do, but it was keeping calm, just keeping calm, which I like to think I managed to do.
Mr. Ragg, you came here to present the championship trophy to Bradford City. You ended up running for your life.
That's how it goes, but believe you me, I was really frightened, really scared, and I'm terribly sorry on a day like this. When the cup's being given, it should be a celebration day, but it finishes up like this.
Where were you?
I was actually just leaving my seat in the main corridor behind the stand, and we saw the fire coming along very quickly behind us.
So you were able to get out fairly quickly, but did you see a lot of the people who weren't able to?
We saw a lot of people who were really struggling.
I'd heard that a lot of people had been taken to Bradford Royal Infirmary, so it was clearly a tragedy, and a big tragedy, and an international story. But it was my job to talk to people about their experience on the day, and what stories they all had to tell.
Inspector Terry Slocum, obviously a day of calamity here.
Terrible, terrible.
What do you think caused it? I mean, have you any idea at the moment?
Well, at this stage, obviously, we don't know what caused it. A fire was seen in the stand, and within minutes, it went up.
What's the last hour been like for you and your colleagues?
Bit rough, bit rough.
I think the first couple of weeks after the fire, I probably managed on about 3 hours sleep. I mean, I used to have nightmares over it. I used to feel I were in like a drain pipe with a fire at either end, and I just couldn't get out. We did get offered counselling eventually, but like all stupid men, we thought we're hard enough to deal with this. It's not a problem, suck up and see, get on with it. I did take that opportunity eventually, and the only thing that I wanted to hear was that I couldn't have done anything else. Once I knew that, things got better.
It's a disaster, actual disaster. How it started, I've no idea. And it was just panic, really, you know. Suddenly, a little bit of smoke, all you could see was a little smoke at the end of the end. Then before you knew, a little flame came, and then it just went like wildfire, John, you know.
How did you get out?
Jumped over 2 barriers. That's all I could do, you see. It just came, and I took my coat off and put it over my head and burnt it, went straight through my coat and straight onto me, you see.
It must have been a nightmare moment.
Oh, it was shocking, really shocking. I mean, they hadn't a chance.
I think there ought to be an inquiry into this episode, because I think it's almost obvious that somebody has deliberately set fire to the stand.
People shouldn't have even suggested it, but you know, people come up with stories, don't they? Whenever there's a major incident, as this was, people come up with stories.
Where the fire started, I was about 4 rows from it, and as the police were saying back, you know, everybody out, that it just started coming up and up and up.
Was it a frightening moment?
Yeah, very.
How did you get out then?
Well, I worked my way halfway to the back, and I just went straight over the top and came out here on the pitch. You know, There's no end left in there.
There was nobody in the stand?
There's no end of folks still in there. When I come out, yeah. And the flames, they was getting on top of me. You know, it was terrible.
Yeah, I can remember the smouldering, the embers, the smell of the place, you know, was not nice.
The rat, lads.
I had to do programmes on the Sunday and the Monday, and by then I was getting asked to do also around the world. I was getting calls from America, everywhere, asking me what had happened.
Good afternoon, and on this tragic weekend, it's a time when all thoughts of championships, promotion and relegation have been swept aside by the appalling events at Bradford City. The fire that wiped out an entire stand in a matter of minutes, and the latest harrowing figures today are given as 52 dead and at least 200 injured. We go to Bradford now for a full report and the latest news from John Helm.
This is the awful ruin of Bradford City's main stand. Less than 24 hours ago, it housed over 3,000 spectators, all here determined to join in what was supposed to be a day of total celebration. The club had won back its second division status after almost half a century. The civic heads of 7 of Bradford's twin towns were all here to join in the festivities. Little were they to realise that the carnival would turn into carnage.
It was the biggest story in the world that weekend. I remember getting phone calls from America to do pieces for various newspapers and television companies.
Well, this is today's scene, a grisly reminder of the events of yesterday, and with me, Bradford's assistant manager, Terry Yorath. Terry, what's your feeling this morning?
One of complete sorrow, loss. You know, yesterday and today was going to be such a big day in the club's history, and what we got is just turmoil. You know, tragic loss.
And the awful thing is, I mean, there must be people that you and I both know we don't know about the fact that they might well be dead.
That's the biggest thing about it. You know, your own selfish thoughts straight away is, are my own family okay? You know, my family were here, my children, my mother, my father. You immediately hunt for them to see if they're okay, and when you find that out, then you go looking elsewhere, you know, to make sure players and staff are okay, and then you realise, it comes to you that there's people still stuck in there.
It did affect me, but it's only right that I tell the story as I saw it at the time.
Well, that's it then, on a day when the thoughts of all of us in football and outside, of course, are with those who have suffered so badly at Bradford this weekend. Good afternoon.
That evening we did another programme on Yorkshire television.
Good evening. The city of Bradford is in mourning tonight for 52 people who are believed to have died in the fire which engulfed Valley Parade football ground yesterday afternoon. Another 24 people are still missing, so for another 24 families, it's a second night of desperate fear that their relatives' bodies may yet be found among the ashes.
Graham Kelly, Secretary of the Football League, came in. Stafford Higginbotham, Chairman of the club, came into the studio.
The next day we were doing a speedway outside broadcast in Bradford.
I said, I can't do that. I've just gone through all this. We can't possibly broadcast speedway.
John and I had a sort of long conversation about whether it was a good idea for him to be there, because he was going to present it, and in the end he did.
Hello and welcome to Odsal Stadium, Bradford, for the return of International Speedway after many, many years.
Maybe it took my mind off it for a little while. Maybe it wasn't such a bad thing after all. And the Speedway people, what right did we to ask for something to be cancelled, which had absolutely nothing to do with football? It was simpler that it was in the same city.
And I think it was a good thing for him to do, because it got him back on the horse, if you like, and distracted him from thoughts about what he'd witnessed.
I remember saying to Graham Ironside, I think who was the boss, I said, Graham, yes, of course I'll do it, because I'm contracted to do it, and I will not smile once. There's no way I can smile.
And on behalf of those people who lost their lives yesterday at the football match, and those who are bereaved, I think the a suitable moment to have 1 minute silence in their memory.